Hey, welcome back. We're getting to the end of the course, and now we are going to be talking about comparing objects. How can we compare elements? If you think about it, that's a way to describe as well. When we say this is different to this, or bigger or smaller, what we're doing at the end of the day is describing, saying something about the elements. We are going to start by describing two elements, or better, comparing two elements. Let's have a look. I recommend you follow some steps to make sure this is very clear in your mind. Step 1, choose an adjective. What is an adjective? Well, all the words that we have been using throughout this course to describe something like big or small or noisy or quiet or curly, those are adjectives, just words to describe elements or people or places. So step 1, select or choose the adjective that you want to use. Step 2, see how many syllables are there in your adjective. For example, the adjective tall has 1 syllable, the adjective careful has 2 syllables, dangerous would have 3, intelligent would have 4. And this will be very important. I'll tell you why in a minute. Now that we selected the adjective and we counted the syllables, we need to learn a very simple rule. If your adjective has 1 syllable, for example, tall, all you need to do is add ER, the letters ER at the end, and you are going to use the word than to compare. In this case, it would be taller than. Remember, it's not that. That is a common mistake. It's than. Taller than. Very good. Let's imagine that your adjective doesn't have 1 syllable but more, like careful. Careful has 2 syllables. In this case, we don't add ER. We need to add the word more before the adjective and then the word than after the adjective. For example, more careful than. We don't say carefuler. That would be very strange. Remember, more careful than. There are some exceptions. For example, the word funny has 2 syllables. But when the word finishes on a Y, on the letter Y, you replace that letter for an I, as in I am Jaime, and then you add the ER, as in the first case. Remember with tall? Exactly. So for funny, the comparative would be funnier than. And there are other exceptions that you need to learn by memory, like big. And why is it an exception? Because you need to double the last letter, the letter G. So if you look at the spelling, this word is bigger than, but with double G. This might sound confusing at the beginning, but you will see that there are not many exceptions, so it's easy to remember. Let's practice this in a real context. Let's imagine that we want to use the word big, and the first step is identify that word. The second step is how long is that word? How many syllables? Well, very easy. There's just 1 syllable in big. And if we want to compare the red car with the white car, we could say the red car is bigger than the white car. Very easy, right? Let's have a look at another example with a longer word, like expensive. If we want to compare the 2 cars, you would say the red car is more expensive than the white car. Do you see the difference? Do you see when do you need to add ER and when do you need to add more space or word adjective than? Very good. Let's now practice with that structure. Let's imagine that the word that we want to use is tall. This time you will follow the process without my help. You will pause the video and try to compare John with Stephen. And you have a phrase, an incomplete phrase, to give you some additional information. Pause the class now and work on the activity. Are you ready to see the answer? Very good. So we would say Stephen is taller than John. I think that's very evident from the picture. I made sure that Stephen is a basketball player so that it is evident that he's taller than John. Very good. How about this one? One of these pictures we've seen before in a previous class, and it's New York, of course. The other one is actually Houston. Let's imagine that we want to compare these two cities using the adjective crowded. Pause the class for a few seconds and try to think, how can you compare New York with Houston using the phrase that is there below? Do you have the answer? Pretty good. Let's have a look. The streets of New York are more crowded than the streets in Houston. Do you get the idea? Excellent. Let's practice some more. This time, the word, the adjective, will be small. And we are going to be comparing my room, let's imagine, with your room. What would be the answer? Do you have it? Let's have a look. I would say, from the picture, my room is smaller than your room. How did it go? I'm sure it went great. This one, it's a longer word, interesting, and we want to compare the museum with my room. It's actually very easy. Pause the class right now, think of the answer, and then move on. Excellent. The museum, of course, is more interesting than my room. Did you get it right? Well done. There's something else we can do with comparatives, an activity like this one. As you can see, I am giving you two words, for example, in number 1, movies and books, and I'm giving you an adjective, in this case, interesting. And the same thing for all 5 sentences. So pause the class just for a few minutes and try to organize them. You could start, for example, the first sentence with the movies or the books, depending on how you feel about them. Take some time to work on the activity. Very good. Let's have a look at the solution. The first one, in my opinion, books are more interesting than movies. But you could also say movies are more interesting than books. It's up to you. What matters is that we use the structure more interesting than because we have a long adjective. Many syllables in interesting. Now we have Spanish, difficult, English, and I tend to think that this is not an opinion, it seems to be a fact. Most people say that Spanish is more difficult than English. Apparently we have more tenses and more complex language. How about number 3? I don't want to be controversial, so let's take it as an opinion. But I would say that Apple is more popular than Lenovo. What would you say? Number 4, I think there's no dispute in this one. We could easily say cars are faster than bicycles. As you can see, the adjective fast is short, so we say faster than. We don't say more fast. That's not the case. And number 5, salads are healthier than hamburgers. And healthy is one of these words where you replace the Y at the end for an I, and then you add ER, healthier than. Do you get the idea? Very good. There are some irregular comparatives. Not many, so it's easy to remember. For example, the comparative of good is not gooder, it's actually better, and I'm sure you know that. The comparative of bad is worse, and the comparative of far is farther. Let's try to use this in real examples. For the first one, try to compare Ronaldo with Messi. For the second one, try to compare beer with vodka. And for number 3, try to compare the moon with the sun in terms of how far they are from Earth in this case. Pause your class and come back when you're ready. Are you ready to reveal the answers? Very good. Again, I don't want to be controversial, so these are personal opinions. I would say Messi is better than Ronaldo. What would you say? For the second one, I wrote beer is worse than vodka, but it really depends on what is it that we're talking about. Worse in terms of what? Just for the sake of the example, let's say this is true. And for number 3, we should know that the sun is farther than the moon. How did it go? Well done. If you need to make any correction, this is the time to do it. Just make sure you understand the idea. The assignment for this class, I want you to identify 10 different adjectives from any of the words that we have learned in this course, and I want you to compare 2 elements. It could be 2 people or 2 things. Make sure you leave the notes in the discussion board because I am going to be reading them. After you do that, go to the next class. I'll see you there.